episode 4, season 4 of 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. Hope you're enjoying this season so far. And if you're a new listener, I hope you enjoy the show and you can listen to future episodes. You can get 7 Million Bikes anywhere that you get your podcasts, so Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, all those things. And if you do enjoy the show, then please leave a review, or you can go on Facebook, give us a like, and leave your review there as well. And you can get updates about events that we're doing and future episodes and more information about the guests. So please do that. Oh, as always, I love to hear from people. It's been really good recently hearing from people who've listened to the show. I want to give a big shout out to Zion, who's always leaving me comments on Facebook and telling me about the episodes. And then he's always coming to shows as well. So really appreciate his support. It's always good to see him out. So Zion, if you're listening, which you probably are, thank you very much. This episode is a little bit different than most. So one, it's going to be on the phone, but I think the quality is pretty good. This is going to be different in the sense that it's a Scottish person based in Saigon interviewing someone from Hanoi who lives in Cyprus, of all places. So today I'm going to be speaking to Phuong Nguyen, who is the host of the Blue Expat podcast, which is one of the most listened to podcasts in Vietnam. It's mostly in Vietnamese, but she does have some English-speaking episodes, which I was lucky enough to be on last year. So you can check that out on the Blue Expat if you want to hear more. But she has a background in foreign affairs. She worked in diplomatic units in Hanoi, and then she decided to move to Europe and went to Italy, then Germany, and then finally in Cyprus. So we have a good chat about what it's like being a Vietnamese expat, not being an expat in Vietnam. And I hope you enjoy the show as always. Cheers. Excited to welcome to 7 Million Bikes, Phuong Nguyen, calling all the way from Cyprus. How are you today, Phuong?
I'm good, thank you. Such an honor to be here.
It's so good to have you on. So I was on your show, The Blue Expat, which is one of the most popular podcasts in Vietnam. I was on your show in November last year. Can you believe that? So nearly a year.
Yes. Time flies, really.
So this is 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast. But you're not from Saigon and you're not in Saigon at the moment. But tell me, so where are you from originally? And we'll get to how you've ended up in Cyprus, of all places.
Yeah, I'm really, I need to share this because I feel so foreign to your podcast. Because as you said, I'm not expat living in Vietnam. I'm a Vietnamese expat, and I didn't also have the opportunity to live in Saigon. I just visited there a few times, a couple of days, which is not enough to say. And I'm really a typical lady from the north. I'm originally from Hanoi. I was born there and grown up for 23 years. And then I moved to Europe. And The reason why I moved to Europe was that I was working in diplomatics before. So at some point, I realized that kind of career is not promising to me, that I cannot really grow further or get promoted like in other kind of work or sectors. And it's also not a very fair position for women. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
In what way?
I mean, you would get more chance to be promoted or to be sent to work abroad if you're a man than the women. Okay. I'm not sure with the salary yet because I just started with the career, but I also try to vision myself, okay, what I want to go so far, and with this career path would allow me to go that far. And then I decided to change. So I remember I was working at my office before. I was in the embassy, and I was working at the same time when I don't have something to do. And like beside the jobs, and I have the breaks, the lunchtime, I search for opportunity to study abroad. And I was looking at business. I wanted to go to Singapore only because it's closer to Vietnam, and they have like the study program, which is just 1 year or 1 year and a half. Because I just want to make a quick switch I just want to learn something, and then to switch to go back to Vietnam and start working in business sectors or working in some foreign companies. That was my dream at the 20s something years old. And then something hit me, and then I just feel like, oh, why didn't I do something more for myself? I'm still so young. I just want to try differently. And then this opportunity came up, just like the universe read me what I wished. And then I have the chance to go to Italy. And I got the scholarship and went there to study, which is really perfect opportunity for me because I could travel a lot. I always wished to visit Italy, and it became a chance for me to live there and study economics, which obviously is not very something for Italy, but okay, I don't care because I know it's more like you learn from the job than learn from the school, right? So the diploma just help you to improve and learn some basic stuff. So I didn't really consider much about that side, that, oh, what should I learn? Or I need to go to the States, or I need to go somewhere to learn business. I don't have that in mind because I also want to have it as a chance for me to use the time that I was still young and travel. And then I went to Italy with the thought that, okay, I would do 2 up to 3 years, and then I would go back to Vietnam. But then something else hit me, and then I lived in Europe. So I moved from Italy to Germany. And then, and I got married, and my husband is German. So, but we never thought of living in Germany. Like, he is a German guy, but he's never wished to live in Germany. And we have been searching so far where we should move. And at some point, I really wanted to move to Vietnam. I was in Vietnam in 2018, in the beginning of the years. I also worked there. I came back to Vietnam, I worked there, and was thinking that if everything would be good, we would move to Vietnam for a couple of years before moving back to Europe. But then we heard about Cyprus so long ago, like from other digital nomads, and then we never thought of coming here even to visit. And then my husband, he just went here. He found the great communities in Paphos. And then we decided to move here, which is also a nice place for me because here they speak Greek and English. So like 2 languages at the same place, and I can need only English in order to work. No, not like in Germany that you must speak German. And it's very easy here, and you have the life, like you always have always on holiday, kind of. So yeah, it was nice, and that was the short story of my journey coming from Hanoi to Cyprus.
And I assume that there's not many Vietnamese expats in Cyprus?
I cannot say that they are expat, and at the moment, after 2 years living here, I cannot call myself expat so much because I'm like, if you expat, I assume that you would move around, you not reside somewhere. But now I will reside in Cyprus. I have the papers, everything, and house. And the Vietnamese here, there are different groups of them. Let's say some people came here to work, and some people came here as an investor. So they came here, they invest, and they have the blue card and those other stuff in order to live here and bring their family here. So but I'm really different.
Do you have Vietnamese friends there?
Yes, I do. Luckily, just for 1 year that I really found the communities of investors. But there are more Vietnamese investors in Cyprus than the number of them actually living here. So let's say there are about like 50 people, like investor to Cyprus. It's just a rough number that I know. And then just only 10 of them decided to live here. Just kind of preposition, it's not the correct number. But because it's quite boring for Vietnamese. And many of them came from Saigon. Well, and life from Saigon to here is totally different.
That's kind of what I think I've written in my description of the podcast is, Saigon is such a vibrant, energetic city.
Yes.
It is really almost the city that never sleeps. So it must be a big shock to people moving from Saigon, especially to Cyprus. How have
Yes.
how have you coped with that? Like moving from Vietnam to Europe, what's been the biggest differences for you?
Mm, when I moved first, I was lucky enough. I moved to Italy, where I found like it's my home. I don't know why. I sometimes I joke to people, maybe my previous life I was an Italian, because something came to me naturally, like the life there, how to get along with people, how to speak the language. Like I didn't learn so much Italian before I came to Europe, but then I just got along so well, and with the language as well. And my friends sometimes, like my flatmates, sometimes they were shocked because they asked me some words in Italian, and they don't expect me to know it, because they know that I don't learn like them. But I have something inside somewhere. I don't know how that is came out, and so it wasn't an issue for me. But then I really shocked, and when I came to Germany, because of the people. So you feel things in like everywhere you go, like you lived in Dresden, and not many young people there. And yeah, it's really cool how people interact. And when I came to Cyprus, what I missed the most, or now I'm really missed, because we don't go out so much, because there's not many fun options outside of the house to go out, Not like in Vietnam, you want to try something, you go to restaurant, everything it's so cheap and good. I mean, eating. And yeah, and you like to interact with people, you like to hang out, but here it's really it's so different. Like people not I didn't have that in Italy, because people also like to hang out, and I can go somewhere. We have the street, like in Saigon you have what do we call it? Bùi Viện.
Bùi Viện.
In Hanoi we have Ta Hiện, and that's kind of area that I can find in Italy, It's where young people hang out, you sit outside, you have drinks, and you can have the fun night, you just spend a couple of euros. But here is not like that. I don't want to always go to a restaurant, and on the then the cuisine in Cyprus is super poor. I'm sorry if any Cyprus listening to this. I hope not, but it's super poor. And yeah, it's you don't have the nightlife here. It's kind of boring sometimes, but yeah, I try to fit, and I always have the hope that I can be able to travel back to Vietnam like once a year, so to change, and then going back, and then feeling rest. Yeah.
My image of Cyprus is somewhere very sunny, very beautiful, but just
Yes.
lots of old people all drinking ouzo, just hanging out. Would that be somewhat accurate, or is that just am I completely wrong?
Well, I live in Paphos, and the Cyprus, they call Paphos is like the small, like Brit city, because there are many retired English people here.
Right.
So it's not about drinking ouzo, but yes, it's just old people laying next to their pool, enjoying the sun.
Yeah, very red English people, I would imagine.
Yes.
So you went to Germany, and then tell me, how did you meet your husband? Because I remember the last time we spoke, and even just now, as soon as you started to mention your husband and talk about Germany, you start to get a very German accent. Has anyone told you this before?
I have a German accent.
You do. As soon as you start talking about Germany and you
Oh,
talk about
really?
your husband, you start to sound more and more German. Has anyone ever told you that before?
No, never.
No, you
Oh,
definitely
but
do.
I have to share this. I have I don't know if it's a bad habit. Whenever I listen to your show, that I like to imitate some sound that when you speak, like you like to say show out instead of shout out. And it sounds like Canadian to me. And I like Canadian English, but it's really fun. Sometimes it's really mean when you imitate people. It's not like you're trying to learn English. You just like find the sport that they don't pronounce the way that you think that it's supposed to be, and then you just imitate them. But it's funny.
I know exactly what you mean. When I first left to go and work in America, and he was my boss essentially, and every time I went to speak to him, he would mimic back exactly what I said.
Mm-hmm.
And even if I tried to talk to him about something that was important or semi-serious, then and he'd mimic back what I said, and eventually I had to say, I was like, I know you don't mean it, but like, can you stop doing that? It's so annoying. I'm trying to have a conversation with you. And then he was so apologetic. He was like, I'm so sorry. He's like, I just love the way you talk. I think it's so cool. I'm just trying to, practice to say it like you do. And I was like, no, like, I appreciate that. That's fine. But can you please stop it? And he's like, yeah, no problem. But then I noticed that I did it to one of the Swedish guys at the camp. So he would say something with the Swedish accent, and then I would repeat it back to him in the Swedish accent. And I was like, oh, I'm the asshole as well, because I'm just doing the exact same thing that people do to me. So I think it's a really normal thing. I think it can come across as mean, or you could take it as I'm being made fun of. But I think most of the time people aren't making fun of you. They're just like you say, they want to kind of mimic and say it, especially because it's different. But so if I say shout out, do I say that a lot?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe because it's that sound is just stuck in my head, and whenever I listen to you, I have to find that.
Now I'm going to be self-conscious every time I say shout out. Well, the funny thing was one time when I was teaching, and I walked into the classroom, and my wife was walking by my classroom because she was taught in the same school as me, and so she was going to her class. Mm-hmm. As many people know, my wife's American. And as I walked into the class, I just went, all right, sit down, everybody. And to me, that's just totally normal. And it wasn't until later on she said, oh, she was laughing so hard because she just hears it so Scottish, and it's like, sit down, everybody. And then I became very conscious of how I say that. But it's good to know. But
it's still clearer to me to understand you. I have Scottish friends, so a couple came from Scotland, but they're not from Glasgow like you. And in the beginning and later on, we could understand each other better, and they learned to speak the language, the English that people could understand. So at some point we have been hanging out for more than a year, and then at some point we say, now we can understand each other better because really at first, and I heard her, and sometimes I just look like, the emoji face that you just stay there. You still couldn't process what did she say. And that's the thing. I really have I was a bit nervous to take on this podcast interview. Actually, it wasn't the first time. Yeah, it wasn't the first time I'm on the English language podcast. This is my second time actually, and I was waiting for that episode to come out, and then I would to be online actually, to share with my listeners, because in the beginning I was thinking, no, I would not share with my Blue Expat listeners because they know me when I speak Vietnamese, and there was a trend on YouTube that people react to someone else English, and I just feel like people are so critical. I never been. I could. This is the first time I stay in a country that there are more people like native English speaker. I have been to Italy where they speak very weird English in German. Somehow you said I have the German accent. I never heard about it. But, yeah, and sometimes I just think it's just that you have the story to tell, and the language is the tool to help you to share it. And why to be so critical with other people? I was so afraid because I know I have problem with pronunciation. And last time with our talk, and you also said with the mouth muscles, it's really an open eye to me, something that I was like, okay, you see that the native English speaker, he also said that there's something that you cannot fix, and you'd be easy with yourself more. And it's somehow I'm really afraid that I'm sharing here, and people also start looking at that. Oh, she's not this, and she live abroad. They just think, oh, you live abroad, whatever where you are, you must speak fluent English and sound like a native speaker. That's but yeah, I've got over it now.
Well, let's be honest. Your English is clearer than many Scottish people's English, so I don't think you have much to worry about on that front. Scottish people, it's diverse because it's like any country. There's some people in Scotland that have very pleasant, soothing accents that are very understandable. And it kind of depends geographically where you're from, or it maybe depends on where your family's from, or, things like that. But when you do come across a Scottish person that has a strong accent, it is really, really strong. And I've still got friends back home that when I go back and I speak to them, even I'm like surprised. I'm like, whoa, you're so strong and so thick. So I am always, thank you so much. Even after all these years of being away, I'm always pleased when someone tells me that they can understand me. It makes me very happy. So tell me, how did you meet your husband then? You went to Germany. Why did you go from Italy to Germany?
Oh, it was somehow in the plan that when I go abroad, I also check the reason why I like to learn in Europe rather than in UK and the States. First, because of price. And the second, because in Europe you have the chance to go different cities, different countries within Europe. You heard about Erasmus?
No,
it's like a scholarship. It's like a scholarship that's signed between the universities in Europe, and then I also checked that I have the chance with this university, so I got the scholarship from Erasmus and to choose another countries in order to learn. And it was really fate because I don't like Germany at all. I didn't have like my plan to travel in Europe. I never include Germany in it.
Why was that?
Yes, I don't know. I'm really not into history. Many of my friends who was interested in Germany because they like history. I'm really bad in that, and I found that there are many countries I find nicer, and with the scholarship of the students, I just want to choose to go to the places I prefer and to spend money wisely rather than going to as many countries as possible. And the way I travel is also the same, that I always stay so long. So yeah, I don't include Germany in it. And then I chose Prague because I also have a family member there. So I chose Prague or Budapest for my scholarship. But then I was traveling at the point they released the result, and I didn't know. I was traveling. I didn't check my email that I have to confirm that I have to take the option. And when I came back and I saw the email, I was like, oh, I don't want to swear here. But then I just came to the committee, and then I asked, okay, how can I sign now for the university that I wanted to go? And they said, no, but we're sorry, because this year we also don't have the agreement with those university anymore.
Oh,
and I was like, then where do I go? And I would rather not going or wait another semester to go to Germany or Netherlands. But to Netherlands, it's so expensive there, to Leiden. And I later visited that place, and a friend of my classmates, he also went there, and it will be so difficult to study because it will be in statistics, which is also not my favorite subject in the university at that point. So I decided, okay, I will go to Germany, because also my friends just told me, oh no, you just go there, you can speak English there, and Germany is really cheap. It's true, it's really cheap there. And then I decided, okay, then I will go to Germany. And I went to Halle. I stayed in Halle first, and my husband is from Dresden. And during the time there, I was so bored. I was so sad. It's the time I really have the depression, starting the student depression time. It's really there. And because people is a little bit, they totally unfriendly there with the I don't want to use racist, but they do. And I also don't speak. At least the people I met, and I don't speak German. So I just went to just few places, I went to supermarket and and people just look angry. I don't know why. I stay at the counter and they just look so angry at me. And when I cannot respond in German, and I just talk to them in English, and it was really bored there. I was really bored there, and then there's something came up. There's an event in Dresden. They held it every year. It's the International Salsa Festival. And there would be the Sansero that I really like him. He's an Italian Sansero and also famous one. He would be there. So I was like, okay, at least I would do something for myself during the time I'm in Germany, not just stuck somewhere and just do the study and being bored and depressed. And I went there, and I wanted to find a place to stay because it's a couple of days event. And then I went on couchsurfing. I use couchsurfing a lot during time I'm in Europe. I never had any bad experience with them. I mean, if something would be a bad experience, I already cancel. Like I asked some people to stay with them in France, and then they became so weird in the chart, and then I also stopped. I would rather pay for the hostel rather than staying with those people. And then I just found on couchsurfing, and there was not many options in Dresden. I found this guy, and he also went to Asia, and then he was also available at that time. And then I contacted him. He didn't reply, so I already booked on booking.com something. But just the day before that I would go to Dresden, he replied. He said yes, and I canceled my booking because I want to save like 150 euros. So then that's how I met my husband. So the one who hosted me was my, is my husband currently.
Right.
But that's how we met. It's just that I find that we really fit mindset. Our mindset is really fit until now, and I still can feel that after 5 years living together. And we just met there, and later on, then we just text. There's nothing that really happened at the time that we met, and then we text, and it just turned out to be something. I don't want to make people think that you go on couchsurfing, you would find your boyfriend or girlfriend, because many people think that it would be like so romantic from the start. I say it is romantic. It was romantic, but it's not like how they think. It took us a couple months until we really together. And I lived in Halle, and also I live in Italy. So we have some let's say 1 year, more than 1 year for a distant relationship.
Right.
Yes, and I never expect that I would have a long distance relationship. But then it worked, so it's supposed to be the right person. It's not
And where did you get married?
In Denmark. I was
not expecting that answer.
I have my I always going to share about that story on our podcast, because I know there are people like marrying Germans, maybe from other countries, not just Asia, and they have difficulties to marry. And so I decided that we would share about that story there, and it is on my podcast as well. So the reason why we chose Denmark, because in Germany it might take us at least 7 months to consider our paper to get married. So just for the process of looking through the papers, it can take 7 months. And then you have to wait for the appointment to get married. And for sure, as a Vietnamese, I have different difficulties staying in Europe, like passport and resident permit kind of thing. And I have the resident permit as a student there in Italy, not in Germany. So we found out that the second easiest place on earth to get married is Denmark.
Right.
After Las Vegas.
I was going to say, what's the easiest? Oh, Las Vegas.
Yes, there is a bridge or somewhere that you just drive through and you can get married and you can have the paper. That's the thing, and obviously it's just cheaper solution for us to go to Denmark. But it was a good decision because the location is really nice. It's a small island which is very close to Germany. So we could drive to Hamburg, and then we took the to the north of Germany, and we took the ferry to go to that small island, and it's really cute. It's like a small Hoi An there.
Right.
And it was nice, and people were really friendly, and also fast. We can choose date when we want to get married.
And did you have family come over?
My family, they couldn't come. So they have my husband's family there. We also have a thought that we would have a small party in Vietnam, but I'm really afraid of the Vietnamese wedding. I don't like the way we do wedding in Vietnam.
In what way?
Yeah, just so many people. So many people, and you do it as something to show your face. It's nothing that people like enjoy with you. Obviously, now people do differently if they have the chance. But with my family, it would be different. So I was really afraid. So we still didn't do like an official wedding in Vietnam, and I'm still happy until now, and I don't mind myself thinking about that.
And has your husband been back to Vietnam with you?
Yeah, we had been there a few times, but he didn't visit the last 3 years, and we really wish to be in Vietnam this year in October. We wanted that, we had that plan, but now we would not have because Vietnam, we still close the border, and they would not organize a commercial flights until December this year.
Well, they've just started the first commercial flight today, actually, but it's a very limited. It's like 1 or 2 flights a week, and it's to only 6 specific cities like Guangzhou and Korea in China, and then another one in Korea. Anyway, but yeah, and then you'd have to do quarantine if you came back, so you don't want to do that. So probably have to wait a bit longer, unfortunately, wouldn't you? Do you keep up with do you cook in Vietnamese? Can you find Vietnamese ingredients in Cyprus?
Now I can find it. I'm really trying to be creative with my cooking because I live in Europe for a while. And at first, when I was in Italy, I didn't have the chance at all to cook the things I want to cook, like Vietnamese dishes. And then here in Cyprus, I could find some stuff to cook. Yeah, I think I'm quite satisfied with what I can find here.
What's the best thing that you can cook? What's your best Vietnamese dish?
It's always better the one who ate it say it, you know. I think I enjoy cooking pho. Yeah. But I will cook in very typical Hanoi way.
And what is that?
And cá kho. It's really the northern style.
Right.
Yeah. But did you try a pho in Hanoi?
Probably. I don't really eat pho that much. It's not really one of my favorites. I would prefer bún thịt nướng or bánh xèo or bún bò Huế.
You like nước mắm?
No, I don't like nước mắm. Definitely not. I like canh gà nước mắm.
Because you have bún thịt nướng and you also eat it with the nước mắm, right?
No. Oh, like the fish sauce.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'll have the fish sauce with the bún thịt nướng. Yeah.
Oh, I thought if I say nước mắm, you would be so familiar with it.
No, I'm rubbish. I've been obsessed with bún thịt nướng lately. I've been eating it as much as I can. It's my new go-to dish. But yeah, I don't eat much pho. And do you have any Vietnamese restaurants in Cyprus?
No, not yet.
Not yet. There's a business opportunity for you.
Oh no, I don't like the restaurant business. I don't like F&B at all.
No.
I don't like it. But since the community in the Vietnamese community is growing bigger right now, there's still some restriction for them to open the business here. So it would take I think for next 2 years we would find Vietnamese coffee shop and the restaurant here, hopefully.
Yeah, you got to get your Vietnamese coffee. Do you have your Finn coffee?
Yes, I do, obviously. I just had one this morning to prepare for this interview.
So how did you end up in Cyprus then? It seems such a random country. Like, I'm from Europe and Cyprus is just almost, I don't know, it doesn't really come to mind very often. So how did you end up there?
It was the same for us before. Like, I heard some friends visited Cyprus because it's also one of the destination, like holiday spot for Germans. So we heard about it, but we didn't feel like the call to come here. And actually, Cyprus is very popular to British. Yeah, I could see that there's so many people came here and they have their summer holidays here and summer house here even. But it just came to our mind because of the tax reason. I don't want to share this because I talk about this in the other podcast that they interview me. The reason why I came to Cyprus, and it's a podcast about moving around, like having a broad life, and so Cyprus is kind of the thing, but it's because they have the regulation that really support business owners or small entrepreneurs. So compared to Germany, it's really a big opportunity to save so much money. And that's why we came here.
Well, tax laws influence so much in the world, and I don't know if you know this, but I got told, so in Vietnam, the kind of traditional house almost, I don't mean traditional like 100 years old, I mean like traditional like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years old, is a very tall, skinny building.
Yes.
And the reason that I was told that those are so common is because the government, I don't know how many years ago, introduced a tax law, and your property tax was based on how wide your house was. But it wasn't based on how tall it was. So you could build like a 4 or 5 story building, but as long as it was really skinny, your tax would be, quite low. So because of that tax law being introduced, that's the reason why all over Vietnam you see very skinny but tall buildings, because it was because they would pay less tax. So it's always it's interesting that how the government creates a tax law can make a real difference to what happens,
Yeah, I never heard about that. But there on your podcast also there's some digital nomads, and the one that I listened recently, he's also the coder. I think he's from South Africa, and he's also a coder. And I don't know how they set up the business in Vietnam. It's also interests me because I also at some point want to consider Vietnam as an option for us for like business. And when we consider with the tax, and Vietnam of course is higher than in Cyprus, as we decided Cyprus. But the things that in Vietnam you have, because the regulation is not like in Germany, everything's set up. They have every law for every little thing that you cannot move around. But in Vietnam, it's totally like the different side. So, I'm really curious how people set up in Vietnam. And, there are also people with having the business related to Bitcoin. Related to how do we call it, digital money things. They have the projects there, and it's really growing. Like I know some people, they came from Singapore for that. And yeah, it's really inspired me that how people find the way. And yeah, now we're having the setup in Cyprus, but hopefully in the future we would be big enough or having more business idea to think of that. But yeah, it's really interesting, and you know more about Vietnam than me.
Well, it's really cool to hear that you listen to the podcasts. I always find it amazing when someone tells me they listen to the podcast. Do you find that? I'm like, wait, because it's when you make a podcast, like right now I'm talking to you on the phone, or it's just me one-on-one with someone and you're having a conversation, then you put it online and you release it to the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very kind of intimate, is maybe like too personal a word, but it's kind of like a very intimate conversation. You get to talk to someone about things that you probably wouldn't normally talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just you, and then suddenly someone tells you, oh yeah, like you've just said, oh, I heard Devin talk about coding and then this and that, and you're like, oh wait, oh yeah, you listen. You kind of like, I forget that once you release it, that then people listen to it. It's weird, like, because that's you create the podcast to be listened to, but I still find it strange that people listen to it. Do you find that, or is that just me?
I went through that already to that stage, and then now, you know, at some point when my podcast has reached a certain amount of listens, and I just imagine, okay, I have this like solo episode, I just talk, and there was three. I just imagine, okay, this had got 500 people listen to it, and they listened a few times. So the number of listen and the number of listeners are different. And I was thinking, if I'm in a big room with these 500 people and I talk and they just listen to me, it was like, wow. You know, you're just sitting in your room.
Yeah.
You just have the mic there. You feel so lonely. You feel like you're having the conversation with yourself.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it
exactly.
actually turns out to be like 100 people listen to you. That's crazy. And this is a powerful thing about podcast. I like Pat Flint. He's really I have been following him for years. And he has recently some like fun video on Instagram that I also share on my page, saying about the amount of time that people listen to your medium, including YouTube, including reading your blog, and with podcasts. So with YouTube, you can have like, if you're lucky enough, people would watch your video like less than 10 minutes. And the blog, they could spend even less time on this. When with podcasts, it's like forever. You know, you have 45 minutes podcast, a podcast which is 1 hour and a half, or you listen to big name like Tim Ferriss, they have very long podcast episode, but people listen to it, and they do listen to a couple of times, even just not just once, and it's really powerful in this medium, and that's why I'm in these things for a few years now. I couldn't believe it. You know, I had a long break. I'm really lazy podcaster. I have to say that I'm the laziest one, but still I'm here. I'm not leaving it yet, because I just find how powerful it can be.
Yeah, and I completely agree, because the first ever episode I recorded was with J.K. Hobson, who's a comedian, and his episode was pretty successful. You know, hundreds of people listened, and we do shows together where it can be anywhere from 5 people to maybe 25 or 30 people would be. If we had 30 people, that's quite a big audience. And same thing, it was like, can you imagine, like, we just did this podcast that's listened to by hundreds of people. Imagine if we did a comedy show with 300 people there. That would be incredible. So it's definitely cool. And I meant to I actually had somebody who I knew professionally email me. This was after I did your episode, or even about 6 months ago, so maybe a few months after I was on your show. He emailed me and he's like, I didn't know you had a podcast. And I was like, oh yeah, cool. I was like, how did you find out about that? Because I don't talk about it professionally when I'm dealing with work. And he's like, oh, well, because he's Vietnamese, and he's like, I listened to the Blue Expat, and I heard you on the Blue Expat show.
Wow, nice to hear.
That was pretty cool. So how did you get into podcasting? What made you start?
Well, it's really long. You know, sometimes I hope I remember how I started. because
give us the
just,
brief version.
It's I like listening to podcasts. It's something that really helped me a lot during the time that I live abroad. And I really understand that sometimes people wrote to me and then they say that they feel like they're having a friend, because many of my listeners, they are students who study abroad. And I was there. I used to be like them. I used to be a student who studied abroad and felt so lonely. And I found podcasts as a thing to accompany me going somewhere when you have to commute on the road. And then I just think that I don't find a Vietnamese podcast at all. And I was thinking, why? And then I was like, instead of asking why don't I ask the better answer, like why not me? And then I have the background, which is like I worked in diplomats before, and I joined some events where I did I was an interpreter. I did the Vietnamese and English, and in Vietnamese we call it the MC for events. I had that background, and I know that I had worked so much on my voice in order to speak clearly and to match with the mic. I wasn't born with a very nice voice. I was struggle a lot to fix it. And I was like, okay, I've been so long with that, and we have a mic at home. And so it's just the call inside you just feel like, oh, just try it out. And then I try first with recording some audiobooks. There's the website, a forum. I found that they have free audiobooks for everyone, and I just joined it. I did few books there. And people love it. People love my voice, like the way I record, and I have very clear and perfect audio compared to other people on the group. So I was thinking like, okay, this a start, and I practice with editing and how to speak on the mic in this way, setting up, and then I just try with the podcast. It wasn't. I consider it not a big success when I start in the first year. I got only less than 5,000 listens after the first 2 years, because it wasn't popular, and also I've got a big break. I don't do any marketing. I don't pay Facebook for this stuff, because I also know many blogs that they try and it's not successful. And I prefer to start as a hobby. And then I returned to podcast in 2018, and within 2 months, I got 10K listens. I doubled the amount after 2 months returning. I compared the first 2 years. So, and I just see that, okay, people start to take this medium more. There was the time for Vietnamese to learn about this new thing. And I accept the market law, and then people start getting in. And after 2 years, which is now, more people want to do their own podcast. So, which is really nice. And I also pushing myself to make a series now. It would call Làm Podcast with the Blue Expert. So it's the original name. So I would show them how they should start a podcast. It's gonna be a bit theoretical, because I don't want people to take step by step that they can do, and then they do few episodes and they leave it like me in the past. So I'm trying to finish it, because it's not about just recording the series. The series would be included some like handout that people can download, some printable stuff that people can have some exercise, some assignment. So those kind of content I also have to create, and it's a huge load of work, which is also not my priority at the moment with podcasts, because I having another things going on with the career, and I can make money from it. So, but yeah, I will try my best to make podcasting more popular in Vietnam.
Well, you are one of the most listened to podcasts in Vietnam, so you're doing something right.
Yeah, I do something, and sometimes I'm surprised of myself because there's time that I have the break, and I still see the number of listening growing. Yeah, I know there are more shows now, a Vietnamese show now, and people also do it more professional. But yeah, I'm blessed with that now.
And I remember when we spoke just under a year ago, I was talking to you about how there's lots of really amazing Vietnamese comics, but it's all in English. And because from what I'd been told, it's really difficult to do comedy in Vietnamese.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we fast forward to now, two of the comedians that I spoke about on that episode have now started doing comedy in Vietnamese over the last few months, and it's super successful. They're like, I think I saw their YouTube channel just hit 100,000 subscribers. They've done a show at the Hard Rock Cafe. They're getting on television, and they're doing it all in Vietnamese, which is well, I think, as far as I know, it's the first time that it's proper stand-up comedy in Vietnamese. Because from what I know, Vietnamese comedy is traditionally quite kind of slapstick humor, not so much, spoken word humor. And so they're really doing some groundbreaking things. So well done to Huy Nguyen and Huy Lê. And they've got a whole crew of doing that, so you can check them out.
I heard about them from your show. Last time when we talked, and you said you're going to do the live podcast with Huy Nguyen, and you also mentioned them, and then I never heard of them, honestly. And then after you said, and I was like, oh, really? Stand-up comedy is something in Saigon, and then I start searching for it, and it's become something now, and I enjoy listening to them. It's really fun, and I'm really grateful that you're doing what you are doing. Also, like bringing the comedians on the show to have more people knowing about them, because it's something you're doing for that. And for the comedians, the Vietnamese comedians that you just mentioned, I know that they also work on this for a couple of years now until they can be success with their mother tongue and bringing more to the people like Vietnamese people. I think it's always takes some time until you can step in closer to the success for something so new.
It's really exciting. I was just talking to Huy Lê this week, and I was just saying, don't forget me when you're famous, because I think being able to do what they did in English is incredible, but then for what they're doing now in Vietnamese, I think is like brand new, like a new thing. So I wish I could probably go to a show and understand what they're saying, but that's probably never going to happen, let's be honest. So, but I'll just take it. I'll just believe that it's really, really good. So we'll move on at this point to the final questions that I ask everyone at the end of each episode. But you're not in Saigon and you're not in Vietnam, so we've had to adjust the questions a little bit to make them more applicable for yourself. So we'll see how these work. These questions might not work at all, but we'll see how we go. So the first question is normally based on traffic, because we know the traffic in Saigon and Vietnam is absolutely crazy. What's the traffic like in Cyprus, and how does it compare to Vietnam?
Well, let's say from the population, that here we have like 1.2 million people compared to more than 97 million in Vietnam.
Wow.
So for sure, I have so much more space on the road compared to being in Vietnam, especially in Saigon. It's less noisy, but people here also like honking. I mean, for the behavior of people on the road is not like in Vietnam. It's not so much different from Vietnam. Like the number of traffic, yes, of course, it's a totally different pictures. Like you would feel like when I'm in the road here in the city, you would feel like you're some like small city in Vietnam where you have so much space for yourself. But for the behavior, I must say Vietnamese people are better driver. like in Vietnam, the way they drive is just so scary, Of course, we have so many accidents. I have to admit that, but still, you can see how people drive, and with the number of accidents, it's still. If we can just make as a percentage, and you see, okay, it's like that. But here, people, they also don't use indicators. what I hate in Vietnam, but here it's the same. They don't use the indicators. Sometimes they honk at you. I use my bike here. I have an e-bike. I'm not driving. Like here, normally people use a car, right? And I have my bike. And sometimes they just honk because I'm on the bike on the road, just teasing at you. Some old man just tease at an Asian lady, and and they also skip the traffic light, like when it's red, and you need to be aware that someone would pass it, or they don't stop when there is a stop line, and it's weird. They also, but here they have the rules that if you eat when you drive, you would get a fine.
Right.
Because there was one time, there was a guy, he was having his sandwich when he drove, and there was an accident somehow. So that time they started with that you would get the fine of, I think, 500 euros if you are caught with eating and driving, which is even more than using the phone and driving. And they do use the phone when they drive, which I hate so much.
So it's not don't drink and drive, it's don't eat and drive.
Yeah, of course, with the problem with drinking, but you cannot see it. It's not visible like with eating.
Well, I think Vietnamese drivers are the best in the world, because it's just so crazy here that the fact that there aren't accidents just left, right, and center. I think they're fantastic drivers. But I've lived all over the world, as you know, and I find it so funny because no matter where you live, the people that live there say that the rest of the people can't drive. So if you live in Australia and you're in Melbourne, they'll say, people in Sydney can't drive. And if you're in Sydney, they say, people in Canberra can't drive. Or if you're in New Zealand, they'll be like, people in Wellington can't drive. Like everywhere you go in the world, they'll say that people can't drive well. So I think that just means that nobody can drive well. But so quick follow-up questions. Do people in Cyprus drive down the wrong side of the road?
That is the problem with tourists. That's why in the beginning when I mentioned that what is nice here that we don't have tourists on the road, because that's the problem with tourists. And sometimes they confuse, because the Google Maps doesn't work properly here. So you would see people, they don't know if they should turn, or they just so confused on the road. And so now we don't have the tourists, but people. I have a friend. He's German, and he did drive wrong on the roads once, and there was a big bus came, and he also had to crash to the side of the road, and he had the big crash from the side of his car because of that accident. And it was so funny. And here is only place I think I saw also in Germany, they have sign everywhere on highways saying that drive on the left side.
Yeah.
Because here they drive on the left, so it's like drive on the left side, and which is funny sometimes.
I've made that mistake when I go home to Scotland.
You made?
I've driven down the wrong side of the road. It's mostly when there's no other traffic on the road, so it's quite safe because when there's no other traffic, you just forget because you don't see the other cars for reference. And then you'll be like, oh no, I'm driving down the wrong side of the road, but there's no one there. So I've never really done it in traffic, but it's an easy mistake to make. And I know in other countries, I think in New Zealand, there's big signs as well because they have problems with tourists as well saying, drive on this side of the road. So good to know that traffic situation is not unique in Vietnam, right? It's crazy everywhere. So how long have you lived in Cyprus again?
2 years.
So what's your most...
more than 2 years.
A little bit more. So what's your most useful Cypriot phrase?
I know some phrases, but let's say I don't really understand the meaning. They like to say yesas, which is like hello. But when I search in Greek, there is no yesas. And I really like, okay, well, am I sure what have been using? So I would use kalimera, which is good morning. And I don't know what is good afternoon and good evening. I just go out in the morning.
So so if you see someone in the afternoon, you just say good morning, or in the evening,
yes.
It's fine.
I just use hello. But that is something really nice in other languages, compared to Vietnamese, that we don't say chào buổi sáng, chào buổi tối or whatever in Vietnamese. And the saying hi, it's something that can easily bring people to get to know each other. And in Vietnam, if I heard someone say xin chào, I would think that if you have perfect pronunciation and I don't see your face, I still think that you are the foreigner who learned Vietnamese, because I don't hear any Vietnamese saying xin chào if it's not on the show or something.
What? Really?
You think that? Yeah, because in Vietnamese we would say chào em, chào anh, chào whatever. You would say it like that. You will not say xin chào.
Right, of course.
Yeah, I don't know any Vietnamese that's really saying xin chào at first. Or if they don't,
right.
I say it to the foreigners.
I probably hear it because they say it to me. No, but now you say that, I hear chào em or chào em. And then, did you say in Vietnam there's no phrase for good morning?
We have chào buổi sáng, but it's just some name of some Vietnamese television, national television, that they have the show calling like that.
But you wouldn't use that in general?
Yeah, I know I don't. I really don't. I don't say hi to my grandma. I say chào buổi sáng. Oh my God, it's just weird. It's weird.
So I normally ask people what's their favorite sunset spot in Saigon. What's your favorite sunset spot in Paphos, Cyprus?
I have the luxury of living along the coastline. So obviously there are many nice places that I can view the sunset. And one of my favorite spots is it's a place where there is a shipwreck. So the ship is really close that people actually can swim there and get inside. The name is the Third shipwreck. So it's just along the coastline between two very nice beaches. And yeah, that was my favorite spot. But I'm curious why you have this question in Saigon, because is that nice to watch the sunset there or how?
Yeah, there's some beautiful spots in Saigon. I mean, one of the things that you appreciate as an expat, I think one of my favorite things about the whole of Southeast Asia is sunset. So whether you're in downtown Bangkok or you're on the beach in Thailand, you've always, more times than not, you're going to have this beautiful, bright, flaming red sunset, which creates these beautiful colors. Where I'm from in Scotland, we don't really have sunsets because it's just cloudy most of the time. So the sun goes down, but it's not a sunset. And New Zealand can be sometimes stunning. New Zealand can have some unbelievable sunsets, but there's just something special about it in Southeast Asia. And in Saigon now, especially with the river in Saigon and a few of those places have been cleaned up, there's some really nice spots here. So that's why I ask people to find out where do they like to enjoy the sunset here. But I'm sure in Cyprus it's pretty beautiful. Well, the next question I ask people is, would they rather live in Saigon now or 20 years ago? Because it would be quite a different experience. I don't know what Cyprus is like. Would you rather live in Cyprus now or 20 years ago?
20 years ago, I would rather live in Hanoi or in Saigon.
Right.
I definitely lived in Saigon 20 years ago. And in Cyprus, it's really, they also just changed to euros, the currency, recently. And they also they also belong to UK before. And that was weird time here. And they just start growing here. There's still so much of limitation in their infrastructure and things like that. And I would not want to live here 20 years ago. The first day I arrived to Paphos, I have been to Egypt once, where there is what's the name of the place? But when I came to Egypt, I just found some broken buildings. It's just left there, abandoned buildings. And the first day I came to Paphos from the airport to our place at that point, I also passed that area, and I was like, oh no, I feel like if I go to Egypt to live, because of many abandoned houses, which is now they're trying to fix them. And after 2 years, I live here. And because in the past, with the war with Turkish, then many Turkish people, they left this side of this island. So this small island is called Cyprus Island. Has half belong to Cyprus, which is part of Europe, and half is Turkey. So the north of these islands belong to Turkey. So in the past, they also have this conflict, and many Turkish, they left this side of the island and they have to go to the north because that part is Turkey and here is not. So those land belong to them. They still didn't have this one was explained to me from a local, and he said that those abandoned buildings, they cannot touch it because it belong to the Turkish. And then after the war, and they still didn't have the agreement somehow to solve their stuff, so that place the people can from here they cannot touch it. So there's still many abandoned houses that look so sad here, and yeah, this was my impression at first. So I would not go to live here 20 years ago.
That's fair enough. And so what's missing from Cyprus?
Like from the point of view of Vietnamese here, as many Vietnamese people, they came here as an investor, and I will see, okay, what do they invest here? Obviously, this country, they need investment, but what are the plan? So the plan are mostly just residence houses or villas kind of things. And there's no place like proper like factories or for production. And then many things here, they still have to import from other part of Europe or from China. And it's really expensive to live here somehow because you have to pay the import tax and the cost of transportation. And yeah, that's something I think need to improve. And as well as the life here, it should be more dynamic in order to be how to say that it's suitable with the Europe things. And I wish that they would improve, then they can be in the Schengen. If you know about the Schengen. Yeah, so they're not in the Schengen, which is also a big limitation for me because and I want to, now I have the paper from Cyprus and I'm not living in Germany. So they don't give me the residence permit from Germany. So whenever I go to Germany, even it's my husband's home country, and I also need to ask for visa. So right, that's frustrating. I just talking for myself,
Yeah.
I know it sounds really selfish, but I mean, it's also good for them if they improve that much.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's interesting to hear because as I said, I don't really hear much about Cyprus, so it's interesting to hear. So my final question is, what do you miss the most from Vietnam?
Miss the most from Vietnam? I miss the how do I don't, it's very intangible, that you miss the vibe, you miss the feeling that you just go out and then to just get out of your house and you can feel different vibe. You can go shop something, you can go eat out, and you can live in the people can be rich there and have a rich life, and people can have less money and still have a happy life there. That's just so the diversity there. It's more the feeling in Vietnam rather than this typical things. Like if it's something that's a physical stuff I miss would be my family and my friends and food. But what I feel what I miss more is just the feeling of being in Vietnam. But you come there and this is Vietnam. And when I talk with some expats here in Cyprus as well, and some of them, they lived in Vietnam before, and they also really in love with that, and they miss that feelings. And just that only with the people who live different places. Like if you go back to Scotland and we talk together, and for sure you would feel me when I say that I miss the energy, the feelings when you go to Vietnam. And
yeah,
I miss the most.
No, I love that answer. That's got me almost emotional because there's partly I think we've talked about on this podcast, and it's maybe part of the inspiration for starting this podcast is there's just something about Vietnam that is really hard to describe unless you've been here. And I don't even really know how to describe it other than what you just said, like an energy, like a feeling, like there's like living in Saigon these days. it's a big city, right? It's a big cosmopolitan city. There's international restaurants. There's food and wine and beer, and so it's not like we've talked about this before with other guests. The perception from friends and family abroad for some people is that it's all rice paddies and conical hats still. So when you tell somebody I live in Vietnam, that's the image that they get. But the reality is I live in a big city. But regardless of that, there is just this incredible something about Vietnam. So, and I've talked about this before. My wife and I came here on holiday 5 years ago. Just absolutely loved it. The first weekend we got back to New Zealand, we spent the whole weekend eating Vietnamese food, making Vietnamese food, finding coffee shops, finding Vietnamese coffee. And almost straight away, we started planning a trip back to Asia, which was including a stop off in Vietnam. We came back here for 6 weeks just to learn how to teach English, and then we were going to keep traveling and go back to New Zealand. And now, over 4 years later, we're still in Vietnam with no plans to leave. And so I think I love your answer, because it's even you, and I think that's Vietnamese people have that same feeling, this connection to their country. That's just something that's, and I've had friends visit here, I've had family visit here, and every one of them just love it, like absolutely love it. They still message me about how much they miss it, and just how much an amazing time they had here and how they want to come back. And so there's very few people that come here that don't have that feeling, even though it's, I think, really difficult for most people to say what that feeling exactly is.
Yes, I think that we tell people that here there are many nice food and restaurant and thing, but you can have that if you live somewhere else. You also can have Vietnamese coffee, even good coffee somewhere else. You also have nice coffee shop. But the point is that when you step out of your house and you get on the way to that restaurant or the coffee shop, and what you will see on the road and your reaction, the emotional reaction to that situation, that give you some impression in you. And that's things that accumulated to be the feelings that is for Vietnam. That is, the pictures change every day. Even you go to the same restaurant every day for a year, but every day when you go there, you see different things or something you find familiar, and it's bring you the feelings that you would not find somewhere else. That is the things that I think that is special about Vietnam. It's so diverse that you may go to the very fancy restaurant, but next to that you see people sitting on the street having the 5,000 dong cha da and like iced tea.
100%.
It's weird, but it's just so diverse and so for people who like to experience, I think that is really nice.
That is one of the things. It's that juxtaposition of having this. You can have this really fancy, expensive restaurant, and then next to it there's a coffee shop on the plastic stools at the side of the street. Yeah. Well, look, let's leave it on that, because that's a beautiful note to leave it on, and it's left me on a massive high and very excited. And I'm happy to be here. So this has to be, I think, let's just make a bold claim that this is the most unique podcast episode ever recorded, that there's a Scottish man in Saigon, in Vietnam, interviewing a Hanoian Vietnamese person who lives in Cyprus. I think that has to be the weirdest, strangest, most amazing combination of interviewer and interviewee ever in podcast history. I'm probably being over the top there, but we'll call it that. So thank you so much, Phuong. It's so good to talk to you again. Just remind people, you're very welcome. Remind people about your podcast. Quickly tell us about that, and where can they find it?
So my podcast is called The Blue Expat, and you can find it on wherever you listen to podcasts. It's on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Stitchers. You can find it everywhere. And I do my content mainly in Vietnamese because that is my target audience. However, there was a point when I came to Vietnam, and whenever I have the visit to Vietnam, and I met experts living there, mainly from Hanoi, who were living in Hanoi, and I found that it's also very nice to share their stories of living in Vietnam, because from like today when I talk with you, I learned something about Vietnam I haven't heard before. Even I'm Vietnamese, and I have the same with other experts, and I want to share their stories. But then I found your podcasts, and I know there also other podcasters, they share the stories of expat living in Vietnam. So I just want to focus only on the Vietnamese content. But I do have some episode about expats life in Vietnam. If someone of your listeners is interested to listen to my podcast, yes. And you also can find me on Facebook and Instagram. It's the Blue Expat as well. I'm not really active on Instagram, but on Facebook I'm there, and everyone can connect with me on my Facebook. And I have a website which is I'm rebuilding it now, which also theblueexpat.com, and it's gonna be have the new appearance coming soon. I think in 1 or 2 months it will be there.
Awesome.
And that's all.
Fantastic. Well, make sure you check out the Blue Expat. Give her a like on Facebook. So, Phuong, thank you so much. It's been amazing talking to you again, and maybe we'll have another reason to have another conversation in a year's time.
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Much fun talking to you.
You too. Have an amazing weekend, and thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to that episode of 7 Million Bikes, a Saigon podcast with Phuong Nguyen, and thank you again to Phuong for joining me. I was maybe a bit hyperbolic at the end, saying it's the most unique podcast ever. I got a bit excited, but it's a pretty cool circumstance to have a Scotsman in Saigon interviewing a Vietnamese woman who's in Cyprus. But anyway, I got carried away there. But thanks again for listening. Just for Phuong, I'm going to say shout out. So I gave a shout out at the beginning of the episode to Zion. If you want a shout out on 7 Million Bikes, send us a message on Facebook. Tell me what you love about the show, and I'll give you a shout out on the next episode. Thank you as always to Lewis Wright for composing the theme music to 7 Million Bikes, which still gets the most amount of love and attention, more than the podcast itself. But I can see why. As you can hear, I'm still got a bit of a raspy voice, recovering, trying to get over my nodules. Thank you to Lane Nguyen, who helped me design the cover art for 7 Million Bikes. Thank you to everyone who's been listening as well. So go on the Facebook page and give it a like if you haven't already. If you're in Saigon, you'll learn more about the upcoming shows and events that we have being hosted. And you'll see some more posts from me as well. And if you can, leave a review on Apple Podcasts or on Facebook, and you can listen to future episodes on the website, 7millionbikes.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. So thanks for listening. Cheers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you're like me, you may use your laptop at places where you have to use public Wi-Fi. This opens you up to digital snoopers. It's a massive problem. It can be your internet service provider, or you know who, looking at what you do online, or a cyber criminal trying to steal your bank passwords or credit card info, or even a hacker at the next table trying to steal your sensitive data. These days, it is vital that you keep your data safe. NordVPN keeps all of these snoopers away. It makes your internet activity private, protects you from accessing dangerous websites that are phishing for your data, and lets you enjoy your favorite content securely, even while away from home. And it's easy to use, even I could use it. I've actually been using NordVPN for years now here in Vietnam, and I'm excited to be an affiliate partner with them. I've used NordVPN to watch Netflix, BBC, Disney Plus with ease, and I also know that my information and data are safe from prying eyes, whoever they may be. Join now and you'll get 68% off and 3 months free when you go to my link, nordvpn.com/SMB. Just again, for those hard of hearing, nordvpn.com/SMB. The link is also in the show notes. I know nobody checks them out, but go check that out and you can get the link from wherever you're listening to this podcast. As an affiliate partner, it also means that I will get a small commission when you sign up, but at no extra cost to you. So not only will you be getting a great deal through 7 Million Bikes, you get a great VPN and you'll be supporting 7 Million Bikes podcast. Stay safe online and enjoy the shows you love. Any questions, just let me know. You know how to get in touch with me. And thanks for listening to this show. Cheers.